Welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach.
My name is the Uncle Junior, and I go by the Consistency Coach.
And we are the coaches for Coach's Corner. Listen, as always, like I tend to say, if you're here and you're just going to eat potato chips and watch TV afterwards, this may not be the place for you. But if you're looking to grow and become the better version of yourself, to leave a lasting impact, not just to your immediate family, but to the generations that come behind, then you are in the right place. You are destined to be here to listen to the voice of myself, the Mindset Coach, and my brother, the Consistency Coach, as we start sharing some of these tidbits of information that we have for this day. So that being said, let me speak to my brother, the Consistency Coach, C Square, the Uncle Junior himself. Brother, how you doing on this beautiful day?
Man, I'm doing good. Well, I'm doing good, man. Doing good though. The weather's good now. We starting to creep into the spring season. Gonna be over some of these cold days here pretty soon. So I'm already ready and excited for the springtime and for the summer. I just like, of all the holidays, not holidays, but all the seasons, I prefer the warmer months. I know a lot of people like the fall, and I like the fall too, but I like just going outside and not having to wear a jacket or not having to carry a jacket anywhere, man. So what is one of your favorite seasons? What type
I
of year
gotta,
you
yeah, I gotta agree with you on that one. I'm a fan of spring.
like?
Spring is a time for growth, right? So you're
Mm,
seeing all of the flowers are starting to spring up, and you see the grass starting to turn green now, and trees are starting to bud and things of that nature. So this is all definitely my favorite time of year because it's the time for growth.
yeah, absolutely, man. Tonight we talking about leaving a legacy, taking care of loved ones, after they gone. And I know we're gonna really get into it, but before I do, I would like to acknowledge the chat. And also I like to leave the chat with a rhetorical question. And this is before we get into the hellos and all of those things like that. This is something for you just to ponder on as we start the show. So the question is this: if you passed away today, what would your loved ones inherit? And we know that not all of these things are necessarily monetarily. Some of the things that we inherit as well, good, bad, or indifferent. Sometimes we inherit some debt. We inherit all kinds of things. So we're going to be talking about all of those different things tonight. But before we do, I would like to acknowledge the chat and everybody and anybody who is watching here tonight. We appreciate you for joining us here each Tuesday night for Coach's Corner. We really appreciate it. We understand that y'all could be doing a whole bunch of other things, but you decided to come hang out with these two old gray beard guys here this afternoon, and we really do appreciate it. So go ahead and hit that like button and share it with somebody else. And we appreciate you for doing that. So as we are getting into this show, I want to have you guys take another look at this question before we really get into it. So, again, if you passed away today, what would your loved ones inherit? Because we all know that legacy is what you leave behind. So, this is what the definition of legacy is what you leave behind. It's wealth, values, wisdom, and impact. It's not just money, it's how you shape future generations and the mark you leave on the world. So, Coach, with that being said, the first question of the evening is this: what does leaving a legacy truly mean beyond just money? What does leaving a legacy truly mean beyond just money?
I think the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the term legacy is almost like the continuation of in my mind. So it's not necessarily your kids starting, their journey in life like people tend to say, but it's starting their journey in life from the space that you left them to begin. I think when we think about it from that perspective, it kind of changes everything. So now I have a responsibility as a father to forge a path. And it's not necessarily saying that my kids have to follow the same path that I'm forging, but all of the accumulations of everything that I've acquired in forging that path now becomes theirs, more specifically, my grandsons, because they're already started forging their path. So now it's almost like it creates kind of like like a wedge thing, right? If I am the tip of the spear that's forging a path and they're forging their own path, then, when it's time for me to leave this earth, the things that I leave is passed down through them. And one of the biggest things that I believe that I think I was very pretty decent. I say it that way, pretty decent at leaving for them, leaving them permission to do something different, right? Not necessarily doing what I told them they need to do or kind of constructing what their life looked like, but leaving them permission to do something different, leaving them permission to um, do something that lines up with what they want to do something that lines up with their passion, things of that nature until they discover what their purpose is, right? So when you start looking at what legacy truly means, give your children and their children's children permission to be the best version of themselves, and use the things that Papa, left to kind of expedite that path. And that's kind of like where I'm gonna go with legacy right now.
Yeah, I like that. And so are you kind of saying that legacy is almost two parts, like what you leave behind while you're alive, or what the impact you're having now and the impact you have after you're gone?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think just based upon the way you asked that question, I like that. I think if we fail to be impactful while we're alive, then there is no impact when you pass on. But the notion now is each one of us in our older age, we have to realize and ask ourselves a hard question: what type of an impact do we leave? Because I believe everything can be an impact, right? It can be a negative impact, it can be a positive impact, it can be an impact that adds value to their life and help them get to where they want to get to, or it can be an impact to where you have absolutely zero value that you added to their life. Just like, stuff like this right here. We talked about this, leaving a digital library. This is an impact that will not only impact my kids, but my kids' kids and their kids and so forth and so on. So when Papa goes on, 2055, 2075, and 2030, you got you know, somebody else that comes along and say, you never seen your granddaddy? Boy, let me come in, let me show you your granddaddy is. Sit down right here, let me show you something right here. Look at that young man right
Mhm.
there. See that bald head fellow, with that gray beard? That's your granddaddy right there. And now, little whatever his name is gonna be, he get the look and say, "That's Papa. Yeah, that's your Papa right there. That's who started all that." So I think leaving the impact has to be something that continues on through generations, not just for the next generation. If we just focus on the next generation, then that is something. But what can you leave that goes from generation to generation to generation to generation? I think that's why land became such a big talking point at one point in time, because land would be left from generation to generation. And then this is where, my grandmother lived, my great grandfather, my great grand, my great great, you know what I'm saying? So it's like it goes from generation to generation to generation. A dollar? Mm, maybe not, depending
Yeah.
upon how the first generation squandered it, right? So I think that's what legacy has to evolve to in the mindset of ourselves.
Yeah. I like that. And even while you was talking again, I still was still thinking about, the two parts. And, I think a lot of times when I hear people talking about legacy, and even me, it's always about what I'm leaving behind after. But like you said, the digital library, you have to do something now. You have to start thinking and and developing that legacy mindset now before I guess what I'm trying to say is kind of like what I was saying before is that it starts here, and kind of like what you were saying too is that if you don't do anything right now, then it's going to be really hard to leave something for later on down the road. And I think that, like having this digital library, even though, and I'm looking at after we're gone can be physically gone, or it could also be gone from their space, right? So if my son just got back from a deployment, right? So there are certain conversations I may not be able to have. He was 7, 8 hours ahead of time. He may want to call. He can always call, but he may not want to call. He may be busy, but he can always, be on the bathroom, in doing somewhere, and he can pull up a phone and he can watch a video or something like this. He can scroll through my account, he can scroll through your account, he can find men having conversations about all different types of things. So I really like, that you brought out the part about leaving a legacy and how it starts over here and it's what you do now that ultimately affects the latter. So, and I never really I hear people talking about, oh, yeah, I want to build some generational wealth. I hear people talk about that. I hear people say these things, but then, it's just about the money piece and it's always for the after, and I understand the after, but I also understand how important it is for the now and to take care of the now and the plan. I understand that land sometimes is better than houses, because they're not making no more land. You can't go to Walmart and buy any more land. Like all the land that's on the earth is already here. So it's just shuffling around between people, between different people and organizations at the end of the day. Anything else you want to shine the light on when it comes to this right here?
I do, but I think it might be getting into something else you're going to ask. So I'm gonna hold off for a
Mhm.
second.
Yeah, I am. Maybe. Here we go. Because, and I just started talking about it. Generational wealth. Now, I see people all the time talking about generational wealth, and I hear a bunch of different aspects of it. I've heard different thought processes on how to build generational wealth. But one of the biggest, I don't want to say controversial, but one of the biggest, I hear a lot of people talking about this particular conversation. It seems like a lot of, I don't want to say scammers, but a lot of people are targeting people who may not have the resources to build the generational wealth, quote unquote, right? So it's like, and then if when you get into the scammers and people are, oh yeah, just do this, buy my book, buy my course, a lot of these different things, trying to teach people about building generational wealth. So I would like to just kind of start this off a little bit talking about generational wealth. And then, so, what are some ways that you think people can start building generational wealth, even if they don't make a high income?
Well, I mean, I hate to sound cliches, but you got to start with a mindset. You got to
Mm,
have the right mindset when it comes down to generational wealth. I think one of the most important things that you can instill, not just in yourself, but in your loved ones, is that your name carries value. So that's one of the first things that you can focus on to ensure that you start building generational wealth. Like the name Martin must mean something to your three sons and their kids to come, right? If the name doesn't carry any value, then there is no, there is no generational wealth. There may be wealth, but they're never tied through the generations of Martin. So first and foremost, I said we have to get to the point that we recognize that name matters, especially when you go and I want to turn it into one particular thing or another. But when you go and start researching the lines of scripture, the name carries a significant meaning. So your name must carry a significant meaning, not just to you, but to your children and your children's children, so forth and so on. It should mean something to carry your last name. That name should be valuable. Why should that name be valuable? Because now, when you go forward, living your life, you do not discredit your name. Well, part of not discrediting your name means that no one can take from you the things that you have earned over the years because of your behavior, because your behavior is now governed by your name. So that's why we'll start at first, like getting the right mental mindset. Getting the right mindset for generational wealth to exist must be the first thing. Then from that point on, now we're looking at things such as, if I don't make a high income, that's fine, because I'm playing the long game anyway, right? So if I'm playing the long game, now I am budgeting properly. I'm paying myself on a consistent basis, not just working and eating up everything I'm buying, working up and eating up everything that I'm making, shopping up everything that I'm making, wearing the finest of the linens for the here and now. You're not playing the game for the here and now. You're playing the long game. So there's nothing wrong with going to Walmart, buying a T-shirt and things of that nature, and matching it up, and going out in the day, and you're not acting like you bought it from Walmart, but you're also not behaving like you bought it from Macy's or something of that nature. Where it come from doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the biggest things. The name brands that we at one point in time used to sought out just for the I don't know, for the recognition of what we're wearing, those things kind of pass away because that's not what we're focused on. We're focusing on the long game. So all of that money we threw away when we were younger could have been money that you set aside for, you know, the future to come. So now that you have the appropriate budget in place, now what are you doing with that money, is that excess that you're setting aside? What are you doing once you hit that point of having the emergency fund? What are you doing with the investments that you have? What are you investing in? Have you chosen an investment vehicle that actually has the ability to be in existence from this generation to the next generation, so forth and so on? One of the biggest mistakes that we do is we do retirement planning. Now, I know that kind of goes against some, different teaching and how people say certain things, but retirement planning becomes the focus. Why? Because you're still focused on yourself. But what if my retirement planning was more so of a legacy plan as opposed to a retirement plan? Because if it's a legacy plan as opposed to a retirement plan, I am now planning for my children's children as opposed to just for me planning to retire. Because there's another side to it. If you do something that you enjoy doing, and oh, yeah, by the way, you do something that you call to do, there is no retirement from that. There's you doing that until the day that you're called home. So that's kind of like where I would start off. If you want to start generational wealth, make your name valuable, right? Because that's what wealth is all about, value, right? Make your name a name of value. Make sure that everybody within your family respects the name, and then budget for the long game, and then make sure that you allocate those resources into vehicles that plays the generational game.
Man, you was on it with that one. There was a lot of good points in there. And there, as you were talking, I was picking up notes about things I was gonna want to say, but then I threw all of that away when you said wealth is valuable. Or there's value in wealth, or something like that. What did you say? The value in wealth.
That's
But
it.
either way, go
It's
ahead.
it's all about value. Wealth is all about value. Whether we're talking
Wealth.
possessions, money, whatever. Wealth means value.
Yes. So wealth means value. So I started thinking about other things that are just as valuable as wealth, or other things that are valuable too. And I thought about my health. I thought about my time, a whole bunch of other different resources. I thought about knowledge, right? This digital library is just about knowledge and information and perspectives at the end of the day. This one, and on the Hearts of Men podcast, on the Empower Perspective podcast, Friday nights, 8 p.m. You can check us out over there as well. So, but I start thinking about building the generational wealth in other areas, not just financially. So, building the digital library between these two podcasts is taking care of that portion of it. Is taking care of, well, some of the knowledge piece in that. But then there's also the relationship wealth that needs to be established here on earth as well. Like, are we building generational wealth in our relationships? Are we building relationships that are going to stand to, whereas my sons are valuing the Martin name, not only with me, but their grandkids? When they call me Pop Pop, and down the road after that, like, are they going to still hold value to the name as well, and then pass along some of the good things that they've learned from me and things that they've learned on too? And I think, it was important when you talked about mindset too, because I don't know if there's something that we can that we can necessarily pass down as parents, or in through the generations. But I think, if nothing else, one thing we can pass down is an example, being an example. I think we can pass down information, but yeah, I think we can definitely pass down information, and I think, and knowledge and information is like that. But um yeah. I don't know why I got stuck right there.
Yeah, but I think we can. I think we can pass mindset down.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's where I got stuck at, on the mindset. Can we pass down mindset?
I think we can. I
Okay.
think we can, because if you think about it, we inherited a mindset. We inherited a mindset that was passed down to us through our ancestors. And based upon how they saw life, that was the lens in which they taught us, and they trained us, and they raised us up. So, whatever mindset that we have, that should be the lens in which we teach our children. And when we do that, that foregoes them having to go through some of the struggles that we may have went through when we were younger. So I really do believe that we can pass down a mindset. And if you really pay attention to society, you'll see it in
Mhm.
certain pockets, right? These people believe that they can, just because. These group of people over here believe that they might be able to do it, but
Mm.
they need some help. These group of people over here say, well, it didn't, we got to work twice as hard and be twice as smart. And with a little luck, we'll be able to do this and do that, whatever the case may be. So to me, all of that is
Mm,
mindset. That is mindset, because principles don't really care who you are. Principles don't care your ethnic background, your educational understanding, none of those things. So if we get to the point of teaching through the lens of principles, those mindsets, those principles that govern mindset, then what we can do is we can pass a mindset down from generation to generation. I make it a habit to tell my kids and anybody child that I talk to, I don't care who they are, I always try to say something empowering and uplifting to them, right? I want them to recognize that you were created perfectly, regardless of what you think about yourself right now. But I also want them to realize that there's so much ahead of you that you can't even fathom what the future holds. So just keep shooting high. Don't limit yourself. Don't set goals here. Set goals way up here. Like, I want you to set goals so high that when you look up at them, your nose start bleeding. That's the type of mindset I'm talking about. Because in the past, people would tell you to set goals to give you an emotional fulfillment. Well, I would, again, we talked about this before. I would tell you to set goals way up here, then set the milestones, right? The milestones are the one that give you the emotional fulfillment that helps you to understand that you can continue to press forward to the goals. So that's my thing. The mindset can be passed on if we share it with those children that we have and their children as well.
yeah, I never really thought about that, but I can definitely see the way you put it made it a lot easier to understand. And now, I think probably for a lot of people, because at first I was like, man, can you pass down mindset? But the reality of it, now that I think about it, you can. You absolutely can pass down mindset. Um, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But it is what it is. It's passed down because that's what people know to pass down, and sometimes it's not even intentional. Like, I pass certain things down, I pass certain mindsets down without even knowing that I was passing them down.
Hmm.
you know and I think we all do that. I think sometimes we may be driving in our vehicle. We taking kids to school for years and years, and then when they start driving, they're swerving and they're cutting people off, and they're being disrespectful, or or even cruising and leaning back. We like, well, where you get this from? Right, this is how I see you drive. And yes, some of those are mindsets, you know what I mean? Because that's what they saw. Yes, some of it is environmental, but sometimes our environment in a sense is part of what creates our mindset as well. So um yeah, man, it's funny.
I give you a real quick, if I can.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I give you a real easy example. Um, it's like, I don't know if you remember when your son started walking. Either one of them, doesn't really matter. When
yeah.
they first
Hmm.
started walking, at first they were brave enough to stand up, and then they
Hmm.
stood up, and then they held their hands up, and then they'll fall back down. And then
Hmm.
eventually one of you say, well, come to me, right? You hold your
Yeah.
hands up, come to me. So they didn't have the mindset that they could do it at first. They seen you do it, so they wanted to do it. But then they had the fear because they knew that when they stood up, they'd fall down. But because you stood in front of them and said, "Come to me," like, you had the mindset first, and then you kind of extended it to them, and you held the space of faith for them to actually try it. It's the same thing we do in coaching. The exact same thing. There are things that people want to achieve that they don't necessarily believe that they can achieve, but you got to hold the space for them long enough for them to make the effort and try it. Same thing we do with our kids.
Yeah, that's funny you said that, because now I think back, and even just in one parent or two parent households, or even when you have parents who have different mindsets, right? So you have one parent who's like, "Oh no, the child will fall down," and someone to rush over there, "Oh, go pick him up," and then someone like, leave him alone, they be fine, they get up." But that right there is developing that mindset in that child, even that early on. You know what I mean? That the parents, we're developing that child's mindset by doing those two different things. And that's, when you start talking about kids, it's like, all right, I get it now, I understand it. So it just keeps getting clearer and clearer, so I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that analogy. Um, so we already been talking about money and stuff like that. So I know a lot of time when we talk about leaving a legacy, money is one of those key topics that we focus on. You know, buying properties, you know, life insurance, all these different things. So, what non-financial aspects of a legacy are just as important as money?
I just started talking about one.
Yep, sure
Child
did.
child development. I'm gonna get away from the mindset right now because you know that's always gonna be number one for me.
Hmm.
Child development is one of the biggest legacies that we can pass down. And I think sometimes what we don't necessarily realize is how vital and important that is. If we don't necessarily raise a child up, giving them the necessary tools that they need to be fully functional adults, then what they tend to do when they become adults is they struggle a little bit. They struggle with life, they struggle with their emotions, they struggle with relationship, they struggle with finances. So they never get into legacy planning or understanding what legacy is until they get older, much older, because they're still trying to figure this thing out as life. So I think child development is one of the biggest aspects of legacy that is probably, in my opinion, way more important than money, way more important. Simply because at the end of the day, if I miss the mark in developing my child, then they miss the mark when it comes down to understanding finances. I have a philosophy, and I'm gonna say it, and you know, some people agree, some people don't agree. I just say it for them to consider. For those people who understand relationships, they understand money. For those who don't understand relationships, they don't necessarily understand money. So if I have evidence in my life that I have the ability to create, nurture, and maintain healthy relationships, I also have that ability to do so when it comes down to having a relationship with money as well. So, and I'm not talking about making a lot of money. Making a lot of money is based upon a skill set. Because as we've seen throughout history, people have made a lot of money and they lost it just as fast as they made it because they were squandering
Hmm.
it on things, hoping that people like them because of the things that they have. When that child is developed and nurtured in the right way, they don't necessarily look to use their money to impress people. They use their money to serve people. When they use their money to serve people, now they're igniting a principle in their life that will continue to pay them even when they don't necessarily look for it.
Yeah, you said that, and I guess I was gonna hit on relationships, but I was just like, oh, you already kind of knocked it out. So I think for me, one of the things I'm gonna go back to the knowledge piece again. You know, the knowledge and the information, and more importantly, even the lessons learned. You know, I think that if we can pass on, our legacy, a lot of lessons that we learned, say, hey, you know what, you know probably better, son, that you measure it twice and then you cut it once. You know what I mean? If you can learn how to do that, you'll save yourself a lot of money, a lot of back and forth going to the lows and stuff like this, like I did. Sometimes I ain't want to look at the directions. I want to put stuff together on my own. So, sometimes just knowledge and information and the lessons that we learn from all of the different things that we go through, and this is why part of this is part of the digital library, and part of the reason why we're over here doing this is we've made a lot of mistakes. You know what I mean? We've messed up. We've had a whole bunch of money. We've had broken marriages. You know what I mean? I've had demotions. I've moved around on jobs. I've almost filed bankruptcy. You know what I mean? So I've all of the things, but I've learned a lot of lessons in that. I've learned that I don't need to buy it right now, and maybe I should save for it, or maybe I should, work an extra job to go and buy that want. Maybe we can't do the 30-day trip, but we can do the 2-day trip. I mean the 2-week trip. So just making adjustments in my life financially and in relationships. Hey, maybe not just look for just the outside aesthetics when it comes to looking for a wife. There's more to a woman than just what she is on the outside. you know just a whole bunch of different things, learning the importance of knowing how to cook, knowing how to tie, just things you need to know just as being a human being. And then again, like I said, a lot of these different lessons and stuff that have been learned from all of the things that we've been going through over these years is definitely something that I believe that is just as important as money. Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. Those like, and that kind of it kind of ties hand in hand what I was just saying.
Do.
Again, we teach them those lessons that makes them a fully functional adult that does not have attachment issues, that do not struggle with their emotions, that do not struggle with psychological imbalances. And because they now have the ability to focus on this thing and focus on that thing and focus on great relationships, you'll find that a lot of these things will work in their favor.
Hmm. All right, so this is the one for me that I have been thinking about off and on for some time, right? I used to have this one mindset. I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna leave everything, blah blah blah. Then one time I was like, I'm gonna spend all my money because theoretically I got 3 boys, right? So theoretically, by the time I roll up out of here, right? They may be in their 60s and their 70s or whatever like this, right? So theoretically, they should have their retirement plans. They should have everything set up for their kids, all of their stuff, their legacy plan. They should have everything set up. So you know what? Me and Shell, we can spend all of this money, So I kind of want to throw it out there. I'm not doing it. I'm definitely leaving legacy and stuff like that for future generations. But that is something I've been thinking about because, you know, there was something I never started thinking about until a few years ago. And it's like they're gonna hopefully, if we've helped develop some of their mindset, that they're going to be on the right path to creating their own legacy plans for their family and their future too. So maybe how can I get into that? But how do you balance enjoying your money now versus saving for future generations? And before you answer, I'm gonna say one more thing. I remember when I was a school counselor at the elementary school, and there was a lady who used to drive a vehicle, and on the front of her tag it said, "I am driving my kids. I'm driving my kids. What's the word? And I can't think of it. Not legacy. Um, all the money you leave for them after you die. Now I messed it all up because I can't remember the word. But she said she was driving her kids, whatever.
Inheritance.
Inheritance, that's the word. Yeah, I'm driving my kids' inheritance. Can't think of that word, but yeah. And I was like, and that's what a couple of that's what kind of made me start thinking about it. But I am definitely looking to get a little more into it and hearing and seeing what the chat may offer to say about this conversation. So again, how do you balance enjoying your money now versus saving for future generations?
I think this is a good question because just looking at it, the initial thought is that there has to be a balance, and whatever that balance look like, it's spread across. But I don't think that's really what it is. I think the balance is found in the word enjoyment, right? So when I look at enjoying my money now, what does that look like? Like I said, you don't look for the name brand this and the name brand that. Um, it's within reason. It's with a certain level of maturity at the age of 51. It's with not having the need to compete with other people out there when it comes down to what they're doing and what they say enjoying life is all about. Once I define what enjoyment looks like for me, that helps me to understand what do I need to pay for as it pertains to my life today. And if I have, you know, a X amount of dollars that come in every month, then based upon what my budget has allocated to me, that in turn is what I can use. But then I don't necessarily have to use the entirety of it because what enjoyment looks like from month to month to me may ebb and flow. It may look like doing this one month. It may look like not necessarily doing it at all on another month. I joke when I say it, I'm a solar person. Solar, SOLAR. When the sun is out, I might be out. But in the sun ain't out, I'm not going out. You know what I'm saying? So you ain't got to worry about me going out to spend money when the sun ain't
Yeah.
out. Now, there's a thing that, technology has made it very difficult because I can spend money and it comes to my own home today. And that's called
Hmm.
Amazon, TikTok, and all these other things. So there has to be a level of discipline that you exercise that lines up with your budget. But then by that same token, you can exercise discipline within the discipline as well. Do I really need that thing or is that a thing that I want? And sometimes when we get so stuck in the wants that you have, again, boxes over there that you haven't opened, right? Well, that was a want. It wasn't a need. I literally had just looked at a box of a thing I bought probably about 2 years ago. It is literally still in the box, sitting right where sitting right where I put it at when I brought it in the house. Did I need it? No, I wanted it. So was it valuable? It might be valuable to somebody else for a gift later on, but it wasn't valuable for me. I just wanted it. I bought it. It's here. Not doing anything with it. Waste of money. That was a waste of. I'm telling you, just being transparent. That was a waste of money. So I think when we do that, we recognize the difference between a need and a want. And I know some people say, "Well, I got a job. I should work. I work. That means I should be able to get what I want, not
I
necessarily just get what I want."
deserve.
Sure, there is an element of that, but it's not just being able to get what you want. Is the thing that you want, is it useful or not? That's for each person to figure out within themselves. But that's why I say the balance is in the word enjoyment. when when we understand that part, then I don't think there would be an issue with saving for future generations, because what you'll find is that outside of taking care of needs, outside of getting the things that you want that are useful at this particular point, I think you'll find that you have more money in the month, as it pans itself out. And so, what do you do with the excess? Are you the type of person that look at your bank account and you want to see the additional zeros, or are you the type of person that want to know that your money is actually going to work for you?
Yeah, man. All great points. Especially with the balance and piece in there. And I get the understanding part. I mean, the enjoying your money part too, and enjoying life. I want to be able, like you said, the balance. I want to be able to, do some things now, but I also want to be able to do some things 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I don't want to do everything now and because I hear different mindsets. I remember a long time ago, I was like, I can't wait till I get older so I can travel. But then I was like, man, do I really want to be traveling? I mean, yes, I can travel in my 60s and 70s, but why wait until I'm in my 60s and 70s? You know what I'm saying? I'm older. I may be less mobile. I may be more vulnerable because I'm older and people are like, man, look at them old man over there. You know what I mean? Just I'm as I age, I may become more of a target for somebody. So why not travel when I'm in my 30s and in my 40s and in my 50s while I'm still able to move and get around and physically and stuff. I kind of made the decision to start instead of saving everything and investing everything to start. All right, bro. It's okay to do some things now and to do this and to do this. Yeah, it's okay to buy this, but not overboard. Not I deserve all of this and yada yada yada. So I just spend because tomorrow ain't promised to me. All these different things that we hear, and I understand them and I get them. And yes, tomorrow is not promised. But what if you do live to be tomorrow? You know what I mean? If tomorrow's not promised, then it won't matter either way. But if by certain chance you are on here on this earth for a long time and you had until you're 90 and you had the mindset of, well, I ain't worried about it. God gonna provide. I need this. I deserve this. All these things that we say. Tomorrow ain't promised. All these different things that we say, and then the last thing I hope that a lot of people don't end up is in a space later on down the road to whereas that mindset didn't work out for them because at the end of the day, a lot of times that's what it is that mindset that they have to whereas they are only thinking about now. And I understand that because I used to think about that. But to somewhere along the road, I bumped my head or something. It's like, hey, if I want to stop working, at some point there has to be something there to pull from. And if there's nothing to pull from, then that means I have to continue to work until there is something to pull from. Unless someone unless someone is gonna poof and just decide they're gonna come into my life and pay all of my bills for me every month. And for the most of the time, that don't happen to folks. Well, some people, maybe if you're pretty enough, but I mean, let's be real. There's a
I,
lot of if you pretty enough, there may be some woman or some man that may be willing to pay for your life, and she'll pretty enough. She good.
oh
Shout
my
out to
goodness.
Shell. but she works too. She just has a different type of job.
There you go.
You work. I don't know, man. We done with that one. So you talked about it. Now you talked about it. Um, but we were when we were talking about children, we were speaking. I think maybe more young kids, but I think this conversation, I'm kind of interested when we look at children and how it's answered. Are we going to look at it from a lens from a little child growing up, or from like our adult children? Because as I'm looking at this question, I think that both of these that this conversation maybe is important to have at an early age too, not just when they get older, just to kind of set the foundation. But what are some ways to prepare children or loved ones to handle wealth responsibility?
By giving it to them. I'm
Give
gonna
it to
start.
them.
I'm gonna start right there by giving them wealth responsibility. We
Mm,
leave it to the school system to teach our children about money, but the only thing the school system teach them really, if we really stop and think about it, it teach them how to count it and how to spend it.
mm-hmm.
They don't. It doesn't teach them how to build it. It doesn't teach them how to invest it. Sure, you can go as they get older. They can take more specialized courses and things of that nature that can help them with, building money, help them with investing money. But that should be work that's taught at home. We should be
Yep.
teaching our children how to create money at home, how to invest money so money can create money. We should teach our children, like little, like give them small things, give them like $100, and have them to invest that hundred. Like give them, instead of giving kids allowance, which I think is probably one of the worst things you can do. Instead of giving our kids allowance, why don't we give them something that creates money for them over the years, right? Why don't we buy them a CD instead of giving them allowance? If you want to give your child, like, I don't know, $25 a week, in allowance, instead of giving your child $25 a week, why don't you just go out there and buy a CD for $100 every month? And so now over the year, bought your child like 1,200 bucks in CDs. And you do that every year until they see what's actually happening. Then you teach them that process as well. So now they understand what actually happens before they understood what was actually happening, right?
Mm,
Before they realized, and let's just say you started this at the age of one. Like, and if you did not write this down, shame on you, especially if you got little kids. I mean, seriously, shame on you. If you started this process when they were 1 year old, no S on the year, by the way, 1 year old, if you start, slow roll, I got it. I'll tell you bad dad jokes. I'm here for it all day long. If you started this process at the age of one, so $1,200 a month, I mean, $1,200 a year going into a CD. So $1,200 every year to that child until they turn 18. And oh, yeah, by the way, when that CD matures, you just roll it over into another one. They're already starting their life off on the right foot. Number one, you teach them what you were doing. Number two, and then number three, now what you'll find is that they're going to exercise those responsibilities moving forward. Because in their mind, this is what dad did for me. He taught me this, he showed me this, and he modeled it all at the same time. And then he passed it on to me because it was my money that he was building for me. And then that became the thing that began my retirement account, or more specifically, my legacy account, because this is one of the things that he passed on to me. Just that aspect of it. And that thing began my retirement tree going. But it's not for retirement, it's really for legacy. We're just going to put it in retirement accounts so that they can continue to work. You do things like that. Teach kids things like that. Teach kids how to do budgets. Teach kids what the different vehicles of investment is. What's the difference between a Roth IRA and what is it, a SEP? You have
Walking
traditional,
traditional.
you got Roth, and you have a SEP, right? What's the difference between account? Why is a SEP, separate? What can I do with a SEP, right? So those things matter. And they're like, wait, what's the value of insurance? Why should I have insurance? How much insurance should I have? What drives that number? Like all of those things, you should be able to teach your child that in the home. They should
Mm-hmm.
understand that in the home before they get out in the world. And like you said, the sharks start biting. Hey,
Yep.
do you have a come to this seminar? We're gonna teach you how to get, what is that? Man, I don't want to talk bad about no company.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I won't talk
All
bad
of
about
all
no
the
company.
things.
But the company that invites you to eat a free, you remember that, eat a free lunch, they'll buy you a free lunch, and then they're gonna
Or
try
some
to sell
free
you some
steak.
life. Yeah, they're gonna try to sell you some.
Mhm.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. I don't want to call that name, but y'all know it because everybody
Mhm.
probably participated or got invited at one point in time. What happens if you teach your child all of that at home? What can they teach your child that they don't already know? So when you start, again, this is mindset. When you start doing those things early and developing them mentally for what the world is going to show them, not the Googles and Gagas and all that stuff. Let's go to SeaWorld. Let's go to Disney World. Let's do all that stuff. That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
What does your child need you to do? Right? You want to create the memories so that you can show your friends about what you did with your family. That's all well and that's all well, and there may be a space for that. But if you're not teaching your kids these things early, then what good are you doing them and setting them up for the future? They can't take that picture from SeaWorld and show it to a creditor and say, "Hey, I got this. Okay, will this do?" No, it's not. So that's my thing.
Yeah, you made another good point about and I think a lot of people probably glossed over it. You talked about that legacy from putting that money into that account from the age one until they turn to get a certain age and then rolling that over into a legacy account. I've never heard that before. This is the first time I've ever heard that. So I know it probably went over a lot of other people's head. Here's what I have heard. We're gonna set aside some money for little Johnny when he turn 18. We got money for college. Bam, when they turn 16, we buy little Johnny we can buy little Johnny a BMW or a motorcycle that he always wanted. So I most of the time I hear these conversations, it's saving money or putting money into an account and then buying or purchasing something. So this is the first time I've heard of money for a legacy. So why did you go with legacy versus what I've always heard in my 49 years of life? Where did that come from?
It came from me asking myself some very difficult questions because I know we talk about information all the time, and the internet is full of information. But where you get to be at an advantage is where you learn how to hear what people are not telling you. People are telling you to set money aside for college, but what if you don't want to go to college? Well,
Yep.
great. Me and my wife are going to go on vacation. But didn't you
Yep.
set that money aside for him or her? So, in essence, that's their money. Don't take it away from them now. Give it to them, but give it to them the right way, right? Set the conditions for them to be successful in that. And that's the thing that I started hearing. I started hearing all of these people talking about different aspects of money, but they didn't talk about it from the perspective that it can actually facilitate generation after generation after generation after generation. Because if I teach my child the advantage of doing the right things with money at an early age, if I teach my child the benefits of money at an early age, then one of the things I really do believe that my child will not have to struggle with is money. But in the midst of teaching my child how to have a good relationship with money, I'm also teaching my child how to have a good relationship, period. Not just leaving it focused on a money thing, but how to have good relationship with people. Because if I can have good relationship with people and good relationship with money, then I can actually have the relationships to serve the relationships. So it can't just be a traditional conversation about the American dream, if you will, right? Get a good job, get married, buy a house, have a family, then when the family get grown and gone, you sell the house and live off the difference. It just can't be about the American dream
Yeah.
anymore. It has to be about the family dream. What is the legacy that you can create within your mind today that your children can take at years to come, 50, 100 years later, and expound on? Because what's available now will be is small in comparison to what will be available later. Hopefully, ideally. I don't know. We don't know. So why allow them to start from the beginning every generation? That's the part that got me. So it's like if you do this and do this and do this, like their CDs, their retirement accounts, all that other great stuff. Well, great. Use them to your advantage for legacies to come. Go to traditional route of CDs. And CDs aren't expensive. You can start a CD. I think the lowest amount you can start with like $100 a month, and maybe even 50, right? But again, remember the child is one. That child ain't gonna come and say, "Hey, Dad, I need $5,000 at the age of 6." You know what I'm saying? So it's a great place to start, and then you get to develop. And as your income increases, increase that. Why not? Why not increase that? You want your child to be in a position to where they can be the best version of self themselves without any restriction. No mental restrictions, no societal restrictions, no restrictions whatsoever. Then as they get older, they can set that goal to where they look so high that their nose start bleeding. I
Yep.
think that's the key. So that's kind of like where I got to. I had to ask myself to pay attention to what people are saying, but listen more intently to what they're not saying. And what they're
Mhm.
not saying is that the way that you build generational wealth is start with the generation early. And you
Mhm.
start the plan for them, and then you roll it over into something that makes them money every single month, and that's where compound interest come into play.
Yeah, you imagine having that money given to them at 18, rolling it over into something else, and they don't touch it until they're 60. I mean, imagine what 60 years of compound interest looks like. Sheesh. I mean, you could just do the math with even with $100 a month. I mean, that's a lot of money after 6 years. I want to do the
Exactly.
math.
I want somebody to do the math and put in the chat. Like
Do the math.
you don't even have to do the math with interest. Just
Yeah.
do it like this: twelve
Yep.
hundred dollars a year, and let's just say little Johnny decides not to go to college, and it's only
Yeah.
18 years. $1,200 a year times 18. That's for starters.
Hmm.
Then
Yep.
take that 18, and at the age of 18, we're going to put it in an IRA that generates, and the average supposedly is 8%, but let's reduce it down to 5%,
Yep.
right? 5%, an IRA. So 18 times 1,200. And then at that point, an IRA for at 5% annually, and then do that from the age of 18 to the age, let's just say 50. We ain't gonna push it to retirement. Let's just say 50. I wonder how much little Johnny will have in the bank. I'm just curious.
He gonna have some money. He gonna have some money. Man, this is a good one, man. I'm enjoying this one. I like, because I was having some questions about, like I said, about legacy and what to do with it. Should I really be putting aside money for these jokers because they gonna have their own stuff? But it's a little deeper than that. So um yeah, so it's a little deeper than that. So I'm really glad that we were able to walk through and unpack some of this conversation, man. I want to jump on this one real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I do want to hit it because I know this happens and I hear about it. I hear, I'm not trying to hear to start anything, but I hear a lot of conversations about what's that word? When they come through the neighborhoods and the other folk take over. What they call it? What's the word?
Um,
Gentrification.
yeah, gentrification.
Right. So there are a lot of times I will see gentrification and like, oh, I hear this word being used, right? And then I'll go in the areas where they're at. And a lot of these areas, not necessarily the buildings and stuff, but some of the houses. I'm not saying a lot. I'm not saying, let me take this away because I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. I'm not saying that it's not an issue. But what I'm saying is in one area that I was in, and I was really close to this area, I kept hearing people say this, but then I would go and talk to the neighbors, and it would be some of the older neighbors, and they were black, and they were living in there. And across from them, there was a new home, and down the street there a new home. And I'm like, hey, I'm like, what's going on? And it was like a lot of the people who have the homes. There's issues and with who's going to pay the taxes, and you know, at the end of the day, there have been some houses and some property that have been left down and have been passed down, but now there's four siblings and they're fighting over who's going to pay the taxes. Someone want to live in it. Someone don't want to pay for the upkeep. Someone wants to turn into an Airbnb. So eventually they decide where we're just going to sell it because it's too much hassle trying to work with my family to try to make this an asset. So now it's becoming more of a liability for us, and especially for the person who is trying to keep it afloat and trying to pay for everything. So I started finding out that a lot of these cases, the families that these homes have been left to, they were not able to maintain the home, so they just started selling them off. So, but with that being said, into this question, why do some families lose wealth by the second or third generation, and how can this be prevented?
I think the answer to this question I just gave, if I'm just being transparent,
Okay.
I think that's how families lose it. Like we go back and look at all of this, the entire conversation. They lose it because number one, they don't value their name. Number two,
Mm,
they don't teach wealth practices, and because they don't value their name and they don't teach wealth practices and they don't help people to understand how to have great relationships, then they lose it because they're chasing something that's fictitious, or they're chasing emotional fulfillment. They're paying for their happiness. They're doing all of these things. And you see it a lot, especially when you look at TV. You have a wealthy family that has one child, and that child is unstable. They don't have a great relationship, or whatever the case may be. They don't have the ability to have great relationships. They don't even value themselves. Therefore, they just blow lots and lots and lots of money. And so I think that's one of the things that ends up happening. So the way that you prevent it is by teaching wealth principles, like we just talked about. Doing something, teach the child what you actually did. That way, they're in a position to where they function well. And I think that's what ends up happening when we don't teach those things. They lose their generational wealth. They lose the thing that makes the family name significant by the second and third generation. It's
yeah.
inevitable.
And then even to the mindset, I think about the mindset, and then you already mentioned this, but also the name part. They didn't really, maybe the lesson about valuing the name wasn't there. You know what I mean? It's like, oh well, it's just ain't no big deal, it's just a house, for whatever reason. So I think it could be a lot of different reasons why, what you said, and then some other things as well. So because I hate to see that, man. It's like, and that's what made me rethink some things about even, what am I going to leave? Do I want to leave a house? Do I really want to start a business at 50 and then have it thrive? Like, what if they don't want to run the business? What if I haven't expanded it or grown it to a place to where it's ready to be taken by them, or I'm in the process
Hmm.
or something? So it's like, now that I'm getting older, so I'm thinking about a lot more of these different things, because even with a house, like all of those people who left them houses down for their kids, maybe they didn't want them. My where I'm at right now, all three of my sons, they already said that they're not moving here. So it's like, even with me, when we do pack up and we move to another state or something like that, like, do we sell the house and take the equity out of it and put it somewhere else? Do we save it and keep it for a rental property? Like, even right there, do I want to have someone manage my property when I'm in a total another state? So it's like, because they don't want it. So now
Right.
it's like, I know that I'm probably not going to leave a house for them, maybe because they're not going to be here, or maybe they don't want to manage the house in another state. So I think it's a lot of different reasons why people lose things.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at the time, man. You got something to say before I roll it?
No, no, I'm over here playing with numbers now because I was curious.
Oh yeah,
I
did you
was.
already figure it out?
I'm gonna show you. This is ugly. This is
Okay,
this this is. I love all y'all. Let me see something.
all right, let's see it.
Can you see that?
I can see it.
So it was $21,800 roughly from age
$21,800.
right
Okay,
from
that's
age one
after
to
the 18 years.
no, yeah, after the 18 years. This is what little Johnny would have.
Okay.
32 years, little Johnny be 50 at
Mhm.
5% interest rate. Okay,
Mhm.
compounded monthly. And let's just say little Johnny decided he want to contribute to what he had going on for, $100 a month.
Mhm.
This is what he'd be looking at by the age of 50.
Yeah.
And again, I get it. But again, at the age of 50, I wonder how many people can say that they got that amount sitting someplace right
Yep.
now. But
Right
the
now.
key here is that little Johnny was contributing $100 at the age of 50. But if you taught little Johnny wealth principles, I'm just gonna play with this for a second.
Yeah, do it. Yeah,
You
do
know what
it.
I'm
That's what I'm
saying?
waiting on.
If you taught little Johnny wealth
100.
principles and he decided that he was, I don't have any kids, I don't have no responsibility
Yeah.
because
Come on, little
mama and
Johnny.
daddy taught me at the right, so I can contribute five hundred
Yeah.
dollars a
Yeah,
month
little Johnny.
easily. And little Johnny's at $500,000 because this is, and again, this is low.
Mm-hmm.
For a normal Roth IRA, the average return is 8%. So little
Mm-hmm.
Johnny get him a portfolio manager, and next thing you know,
Let's say
that's
even Johnny was dang.
you see what I'm saying? And this
Mm-hmm.
is, understand, somebody's looking at this and like, that's a lot of money. Sure, if that's a lot of money to you, but you got to realize if you got dependents, it's a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you got all these other things that you've attached yourself to in debt, it's a lot of money. But if you
Mm-hmm.
don't, it's not a lot of money. If you
I bet I
don't,
can $500 a month.
say what now?
I bet I can $500 a month.
You say find it?
I can find it.
Yeah,
Stop
absolutely.
eating out, those extra little habits, the Starbucks,
Hmm.
the extra I ain't stepping on nobody's toes. I know you gotta get your hair and your nails did. I understand all of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? But it's some maybe that extra trip you don't take. It's a lot of different ways to save up. You know, some people say I can't afford that, and I also, some people say, well, can you afford not to?
Right. And and again, it's not, this isn't, but imagine this. You do this to little Johnny at the age of 15.
Yeah,
And when I say this, I mean you show little Johnny something like this.
yes,
You're already instilling in little Johnny mind what I tend to call a millionaire mindset.
yep,
So you mean to tell me I can be a millionaire by the age of 50? Yes,
yep,
you can.
yep,
All you got to do is focus.
yep.
And that's why I wanted to do it. So I'm sorry I took away from the show a little bit.
No, you didn't take away from the show at all. You added to the show because I think that visual was really good for people to actually see. We talked about it, but now you got the actual visual. You can actually see it, So, and I know for me that was powerful because when I looked at my calculator, you can go to, I think it's calculator.net or something like that, and you can put up a whole bunch of different types of calculators,
Mhm.
investment calculator, if you want to buy a vehicle, if you want to buy a house, you got a bunch of different, I think it's calculator.net, and you can go in there and you can put in like what you did, all these different numbers. You can play around with the interest rate and how much you put in each month and stuff like that. And like you said, when we talk about building generational wealth, and how we started to show off talking about, it's about what we do while we're still alive. So, like you said, if we're teaching little Johnny now, hopefully little Johnny will carry that lessons and those mindsets into his or her adulthood, to whereas little Johnny is thinking about, you know what, let me get me a portfolio manager or go to school and learn how to do this thing on my own,
Sure.
and then really learn how to manage this money. You know what? Maybe little Johnny get the mindset that he want to help some other people out in the folks. He want to train some other people in the family for free. Hey, I'll train. I'm just saying.
No, no,
But
I got you.
yeah, I just started rolling with it right now.
But but
I
but
was like,
that's the legacy.
that's
That's
the
how you
legacy.
pass on and that's why I say when people say, well, if you've never done it, you can't teach it. Biggest lie ever made.
Yep.
That's the biggest lie ever created.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, you don't necessarily have to have obtained the thing to
Hmm.
have an understanding of how to obtain the thing. Maybe you just had the understanding at a later point in time. And
Yeah.
keep in mind, this is just a traditional way of doing it. This isn't
Hmm.
the only way. So when you instill that in your child's mind, 15, 16 years old, now they have this millionaire mindset. They now create the skills so that $500 a month is not a lot of money.
And what
Five,
if? Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
What if little Johnny married somebody who had the same type of mindset? So now that 500 every month is $1,000 every month. Now
True.
they retired at 50 years old with almost 4 million, probably $4 million. It's probably more than that because it's compound, but they putting in 1,000. You know what I mean? So now little Johnny and little Teresa, or whoever he married to, you know what I mean? They sitting back at 50, but you did that. You know what I mean? You helped. Not you didn't do it. You helped spark that by
Yep.
you leaving that legacy of learning about financial knowledge, and financial literacy, and starting that account at 1 year old. Then you did it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's something that not as you can pat yourself on the back, but you know what, I did something. And I think
Yeah.
that's what the legacy part is about. Like you said, I some of us got the information at a later age. I can't start 32 years of, you know what I mean? If I live to be 82, you
Right.
know what I'm saying? But I can't go back to one and start with this mindset and start from my son. My oldest son is 29. I'm 29 years behind. You know, whoever started that program, 29 years ago, they're 29 years ahead of me right now. If they
Right.
started that program for their child, and it is what it is. So there's some child all right out there right now who's 29 who who got this knowledge from their parents or grandparents at some point, and they're almost 30, and they know that in 21 years that they're going to be retired. You
Can
know
can
what
I
I
give it?
mean?
Can I give you the good news though?
Yeah. What's the good news?
There's a lot of flaws in my calculation.
Oh, absolutely.
My calculation did not take into the entrance of the CDs that was rolling over every year.
Mm,
So that 21.8 was on the low end. It's more than that, right?
yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of flaws in this calculation when we really stop and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
If Johnny was making money to where he could afford to do $500 a month, right? Because again, now that helps to drive the skill set that your child pursues because now the parent has helped that child understand this mindset that's going to get them to millionaire status. So when they pursue the skill set to be able to afford this, they're going to have to do another investment as well to offset their tax expenses. So that means, I don't know, 401k as well. So at the end of every job, all he does is roll that 401k over into this.
Mm-hmm.
And now it expedites that. I'm telling you, man, like,
Yeah. We
come see
got
me.
it late,
Come
man. I'm
see me.
glad we got it though, man. And I'm
Come see
glad
me,
that
man.
we
Come see
got
me.
it. Yeah, and I'm glad we got some of it to where we can start passing it down.
Hmm.
I've already been having some of these conversations with all of my sons. My oldest son, we had a conversation a couple weeks ago about starting something for my granddaughter, starting something for later and then starting something now. The
Yep.
later is for the 18 for after,
Yep.
and the noun is for learning how to manage money. All right, so you get this month, put this month in your account. This what you can do with it. This what you can't do with it. You know what I mean? Blah 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 blah. You can buy your little squishmallows and all your little stuff you want to do for your camera. All these different things like that. But I think, like you said, leaving that legacy while they're still alive and teaching and stuff like this. I'm not there all the time, so I can teach from afar. But he's
Right.
there, and he can learn and he can teach and stuff like that because ultimately it's his responsibility, and I'm here to help and support his responsibility and his vision that he has for his children, and that goes for all of my sons, man.
Yep.
But we ain't gonna do actionable advice tonight, man. What I want to do is I kind of want to just I kind of wanted to go into a scenario, but I kind of want to just end it here at the same time, man. But yeah, I want to put a plug on them.
Pull a plug.
You know what I'm saying? We're putting a
Pull a
plug
plug.
on y'all tonight. You know what I'm saying? I think it's been a really good show. I learned a lot more about legacy tonight. It's definitely something that I want to take with me in the future. This is definitely one to rewatch again. It's probably especially the second half of this show. We got going and we got going and we really start nailing down some information and some having some really good conversations. So again, that's what I'm gonna end with today, man. Anything else that you have for our these fine good folks over here this afternoon?
Nope, they got enough of me today. No, I'm joking.
Um, yeah, yeah. Y'all heard him. Hey, that's Dwayne Drive 555. No, I'm saying.
Y'all know I love y'all. Cut it out.
Yeah. All right, folks. We will see y'all again next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another episode of Coach's Corner. We are out.